Review Committee's report on ICAC hospitality expenses. Beijing reaffirms its support for the CE. And Taiwan's parliamentary speaker files legal challenge against KMT decision.
Good evening. Former ICAC Commissioner Timothy Tong came under fire today after a review committee looking at the ways the agency handled expenses during his tenure found spending which went over budget on many occasions. What's more, the committee found Tong claimed expenses which were sometimes extravagant or had nothing to do with the work he was supposed to be doing. Jenny Lam reports.
During his 5-year tenure, former head of the ICAC, Timothy Tong, was found to have breached regulation in at least 14 ways. He entertained 899 times. Of the more than 206 banquets he hosted, over a third exceeded the budget. He also claimed expenses 24 times for so-called personal entertainment, and a quarter of those were over the budget. Claims for promotional activities were twice over the budget. Compared with other ICAC officers, Tong claimed expenses an additional 500 times or so. The ICAC apparently started entertaining guests with the Chinese spirit Mao Tai when Tong became commissioner. The Independent Review Committee questioned whether it was appropriate to discuss official matters under the influence of alcohol. It urged a return to the principle of frugality and avoid extravagance in official entertainment. Tong also spent more than $4 million during 35 duty visits, some of which had nothing to do with his official duties. For example, trips to Kunming and Chengdu on the mainland included sightseeing stops at the tourist destinations of Lijiang and Leshan. On airline tickets, 2 officers were upgraded to business class on a visit to Brazil, costing more than $180,000. Another 4 times, airline tickets were booked without the chief executive's prior approval, and they ended up paying the cancellation fees. In light of all this, the review committee recommends that ambiguities on the commissioner's entertainment allowance should be clarified, and that alcohol, food and other beverages should be included in the entertainment expenses. There should be more checks and balances on gifting. It also recommended the commissioner avoid non-official elements during official duty visits and let the chief executive know about all specific trip locations when seeking approval. And all airline upgrades should have prior approval, and all approvals should be checked and followed up. Today's report comes after months of investigation, but the probe into Tong continues.
Because the investigation of the relevant complaint against the former ICAC Commissioner has been going on, and therefore it is not appropriate for me to make a particular comment.
Some of the findings have not been made public to avoid interfering in the ongoing probe, but the government has not ruled out unveiling the entire report in future once it sought legal advice. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
Well, the current ICAC Commissioner Simon Pei says he accepts the recommendations made in the report, but he stressed that some of the findings are problems with certain individuals and their personal decisions and have nothing to do with the usual practice of ICAC officers. He says the anti-graft body has already issued new guidelines to its staff on entertainment expenses and duty visits, and alcoholic spirits will no longer be allowed during official entertainment.
In Beijing, Vice President Lee Yuan-chao has told a group of visiting Hong Kong civil servants that discussions on the SAR's constitutional reform should be carried out in a rational manner that complies with the rule of law. He's also reaffirmed Beijing's support for Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying and his governing team. Kirti Nandwani reports.
Vice President Lee Yuan-chao is the deputy head of a coordinating team in charge of Hong Kong and Macau affairs within the central government. Meeting with the Hong Kong delegation led by Secretary for the Civil Service Paul Tang this morning, Lee praised the contribution of civil servants in Hong Kong. He also reaffirmed the central government's support for Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying to govern the The Hong Kong Civil Service, Lee said, is a key force in implementing the Basic Law, the principles of one country, two systems, and Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong, and safeguarding the SAR's prosperity and stability. Your achievements, he told the delegation, are for all to see and fully recognized by the central government. Describing Hong Kong as being at a major juncture, he said the city faces challenges in economic development, improving people's livelihoods, pushing forward with democracy, and building social harmony. And that, he believes, takes a united effort, and Beijing is optimistic and confident of the city's future. According to the official Xinhua news agency, Li Yuanshao told the visiting civil servants that Beijing supports the pushing ahead of constitutional reform in Hong Kong in accordance with the Basic Law and relevant decisions of the National People's Congress Standing Committee. Discussions on the issue, he said, should be carried out in a rational manner that complies with the rule of law. Enhancing cooperation between the mainland and Hong Kong, he added, is in the interest of the people. It was 3 years ago that another delegation of senior civil servants from Hong Kong last went on a study tour of Beijing. Li Yuanchao said such exchanges are conducive to the civil servants' understanding of state affairs and will help them better serve the SAR and the country. Kirti Nandwani, TVB News.
In Taiwan, Legislative Yuan Speaker Wang Jinping has filed a legal challenge against a decision by the ruling Kuomintang to expel him. Wang today called for calm, urging his supporters to respect the party's decision. He also appealed to them to not leave the KMT for the good of the party and society. Still, Wang has sought an injunction at the Taipei District Court against the decision to kick him out of the KMT. The parliamentary speaker was expelled yesterday for allegedly pressuring prosecutors not to appeal the acquittal of an opposition lawmaker in a breach of trust case. In another development, the Deputy Secretary General of the Presidential Office has resigned. Lo Chiang said he wants to spend more time with his family. President Ma Ying-jeou has accepted his resignation.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has vowed to boost his country's defense capability so as to protect its territorial sovereignty. His comments came as Tokyo remains at odds with China and South Korea over competing territorial claims. While inspecting Japan's self-defense force today, Abe stressed the country's future peace cannot be assured under current security arrangements. The Japanese leader called on the nation's defenses to be more self-reliant. China and Japan are locked in a dispute over the Diaoyu Islands, known as the Senkakus in Japan. Both Tokyo and Seoul, meanwhile, lay claim to the disputed island chain known as Dokdo in Korea and Takashima in Japan.
To the latest in the Syrian conflict now, diplomats are now working on a Russian proposal for President Bashar al-Assad's regime to turn over its chemical weapons that could prevent American military action. Diplomatic efforts are now in full swing 1 day after US President Barack Obama postponed a vote in Congress on military action against Syria. US Secretary of State John Kerry left today for Geneva, where he'll hold 2 days of talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Kerry is trying to ensure that a proposal by Moscow to secure Syria's chemical weapons will be intrusive and enforceable.
In this stage of the process, our goal here is to test the seriousness of this proposal, to talk about the specifics of how this would get done, what are the mechanics of identifying, verifying, securing, and ultimately destroying the chemical weapons.
Meantime, the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council met yesterday to discuss what to include in a new resolution that would require President Bashar al-Assad's chemical weapons stockpile to be secured and dismantled.
Our collective failure to prevent atrocity crimes in Syria over the past 2.5 years will remain a heavy burden on the standing of the United Nations and its member states. I hope that the current discussions related to safeguarding Syria's chemical weapon stocks will lead to the Security Council playing an effective role in promoting an end to the Syrian tragedy.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin has now made the case against a US strike. In a commentary in the New York Times, he made clear that would increase violence and unleash a new wave of terrorism. Putin also wrote, Syria is not witnessing a battle for democracy. There are few champions of democracy in Syria, but there are more than enough al-Qaeda fighters and extremists of all stripes battling the government. As for the UN report on last month's chemical weapons attack near Damascus that's triggering possible US military action, diplomats believe it would confirm the use of sarin gas during the incident. But the report, which is expected to be out next week, will not explicitly assign blame.
To Spain now, where more than 1 million people showed their support for Catalan independence yesterday by forming one massive human chain. Protesters are pressing the Spanish government to allow Catalan people to vote on breaking away and forming their own country. It was an historic day in Spain as those for Catalan independence took to the streets to reaffirm their determination to form a free state of their own. Clad in yellow shirts and carrying red, yellow, and blue pro-independence flags, supporters joined hands to form a 400-kilometer human chain. The human chain was most evident in Catalonia's capital, Barcelona. That's where the masses passed through the city's main square, around the famous Sagrada Familia church, and through Camp Nou Stadium, where the Barcelona football team plays. The demonstration was strategically held on the Catalan National Day holiday to show strength in numbers for those backing efforts to break away from Spain. Despite sharing many cultural traits with Spain, many Catalans claim deep cultural differences. Catalonia's regional leader has promised to hold a referendum on independence by the end of 2014.
In the Catalan parliament, we have broad political majorities in this sense. We also have, as you will realize today, broad social majorities. So the commitment is to organize the consultation next year. And I hope that dealing with the Spanish central institutions, we will find a way to organize this consultation from the legal point of view.
Polls show backing for secession has risen steadily in Catalonia, with some registering support as high as 50%. But the Madrid-based government is adamant holding a referendum vote would be unconstitutional. Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy and Catalan President Artur Mas have indicated their willingness to negotiate to end a year-long standoff over the referendum and bring greater tax powers to the region. Clashes between police and protesters in Turkey continued for a third straight night as demonstrators rallied in several cities over the death of a protester. Clashes broke out when protesters set up barricades on roads as riot police fired smoke grenades to disperse them. Nationwide protests continued following the death of a demonstrator in the southern province of Hatay on Tuesday. The 22-year-old man died at a demonstration against Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan's handling of nationwide protests this summer. Similar scenes were seen in Turkish capital of Ankara as angry protesters threw stones and ignited sporadic fires. Authorities responded with water cannon and tear gas. Scores of protesters were detained across the country. And still ahead in our newscast, Macau prepares for legislative assembly election. Automatic platform gates on East Rail and Ma'an Shan lines. And miniature robots designed to help cure diseases.
And welcome back to TVB News. The people of Macau will go to the polls on Sunday to vote in the enclave's Legislative Assembly election. A record 20 lists of candidates will be vying for 14 directly elected seats. Analysts believe those affiliated with community organisations that look after the welfare of grassroots residents could get the upper hand. Jenny Lam has this election preview.
Once every 4 years, politics rather than gaming is the hot topic in Macau. Aspiring legislators, newcomers and incumbents alike are going all out to woo the voters. Incumbent Chen Man-kam is one of them. He has offered discounts and cash coupons at 2 supermarkets that he runs. Some were glad to get a free meal and a few hundred patakas worth of coupons. Defending his tactics, Chan says community activities are going on all the time, whether there is an election or not. The pro-democracy camp is running a lively campaign. Candidate Antonio Ng wants to whip up enthusiasm among the young to fight for social equality. Compared with 4 years ago, there are now about 30,000 more eligible voters. Still, the electorate consists mainly of older voters, such as those above 50 years old. Commentator Tam Chi-kung believes voters in Macau tend to be pragmatic. He said trade unions, neighborhood groups and charity organizations often look after the welfare of the people better than the government. So, come election time, those candidates are likely to do better. Traditional supporters of the pro-democracy camp, he points out, tend to be middle-class, university students or Catholics, all of whom are open to new ideas. But about half of the population in Macau are new migrants and their offspring. Tam said they will vote for candidates linked to organizations that provide social services. He does not expect much change to that voting pattern anytime soon. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
Well, the MTR Corporation will soon be fitting stations along the East Rail Line and Ma On Shan Line with nearly 2,300 automatic platform gates. Stephanie Choi has the story.
Passengers can look forward to safer journeys as preparations are underway for the installation of automatic platform gates along the Ma On Shan Line.
We only have three to 4 hours to work at night time, and then we have to control the noise. Otherwise, it disturbs all the residents. To overcome this challenge, we have many mobile sound absorption box.
Some stations along the East Rail Line have been around for a century and may not be able to bear additional weight. To fix this, steel bars and brackets will be built into the existing platforms to strengthen them. The curved edges of some platforms will also be evened out to minimize the gaps between train carriages and platforms. Before adding the automatic gates, the MTR Corporation will install a new signaling system to ensure that train doors are aligned with the gates. The company will also bring in new trains that support the system. These features are expected to cost up to $8 billion for the East Rail Line and over $1 billion for the Ma On Shan Line. Passengers will be able to start using the automatic platform gates along the Ma On Shan Line by 2017 and along the East Rail Line by 2020. But the MTR Corporation hasn't decided on whether they would hike up the fares to cover the construction costs. Work has been underway at the racecourse station over the last 2 months. The company will start working on other stations along the East Rail Line this November. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
Researchers at the Chinese university and overseas institutions have jointly developed a miniature robot designed to reach various parts of the human body for medical purposes. This device is currently being tested on mice. More details from Vicky Kung.
This porous box is designed to carry drugs or cells to different parts of the human body. It's a nanorobot much thinner than a strand of hair, and scientists use magnetic forces to control it. Jointly developed by researchers at the Chinese University of Hong Kong and at institutions in Korea and Switzerland, the miniature robot can move along blood vessels into the eyes, the brain, and hard-to-reach areas in the human body to cure diseases without the need for open wound surgery. The robot comes in different shapes depending on the purpose of the treatment.
We were thinking about, how to improve the payload, for the micro robots. Put more hollow area, and then to let the cell grow inside, or to load some drugs, for drug delivery.
Lee said the robot is being tried out in mice, but there is no timetable for human tests. Scientists also said doctors may not have to use anesthetics when injecting nanorobots into our bodies. This is because the needle hole created will be so small that it's invisible. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
Hong Kong Post has introduced a set of special stamps featuring the Hong Kong Global Geopark. It will be released for sale by next July. The new stamps will feature Hong Kong's nature and geological landscape to raise public awareness of environmental protection and promote earth science. It will have 16 different designs and be priced at 10 cents to $50 each. Hong Kong Post has not started printing this set because it still needs to consider adding security features. Special stamps featuring Chinese dinosaur species and Cantonese opera costumes will also be unveiled next year. And it's time to unveil sports. What do you have for us today, Tony?
We got some baseball to kick off with, and then a bit of football news. With the playoffs around the corner, teams across the major leagues are jostling to earn a crucial spot in the postseason next month.
Well, before the game here,
fans and players across America held a moment of remembrance for the victims of the September 11 terror attacks 12 years ago. Then it was time to play ball. With the division title theirs for the taking, the Boston Red Sox went to work against the Tampa Bay Rays. With the bases loaded in Boston's favor and the scores even in the 10th, up stepped pinch hitter Mike Carp to the plate, who sealed the deal. The substitute batsman sent a drive over the center field fence on the first pitch from Roberto Hernandez. It was the first pinch-hit grand slam for Boston in 10 years. The Red Sox now have a 9.5-game lead in the American League East. The Los Angeles Dodgers look on course to win their division despite a 4-1 loss to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Paul Goldschmidt had 4 hits and 2 RBIs for the Diamondbacks as Arizona snapped a 5-game losing streak against the Dodgers.
Well, the world's most expensive footballer was in a good mood as he had his first training session with his new club, Real Madrid. And who is on hand to welcome Gareth Bale in front of the world's press? Why, none other than the big man himself, Cristiano Ronaldo. It seems the pair were keen to dispel any notion of a brewing rivalry as they charmed the Madrid faithful with a handshake and smiles. The Welshman is expected to feature in Madrid's match against Villarreal, although given his lack of fitness, Bale probably won't play the full 90 minutes.
And finally, Pope Francis now has his own mini Pope-mobile after getting a good deal on a used car, which he plans to drive himself. The Pope accepted the 1984 Renault 4, which was donated by a priest in Italy. The donor explained that when he learned the pontiff has set a priority of reaching out to the world's poor, he donated the car to ensure the Pope has the means to do just that. The 4-door car in papal white is manual shift and has a new engine that will also be used for commutes on Vatican grounds. Pope Francis also got his first byline in national paper since becoming pontiff, but that was interesting as well. Anyways, thanks for joining us and have a great evening, everyone.
Have a very good evening. Good night.
Good evening. There was sunny periods today and it was hot this afternoon. And as tonight's situation chart shows, the anticyclone over southern China is bringing generally fine weather to the region. Today's temperatures range from 27.2 to 31.7 degrees, and the relative humidity was between 67 to 89%. Winds are moderate easterlies. The current temperature is now 28.5 degrees Celsius, with the relative humidity standing at 79%. So Freddie, how's the weather tomorrow? It will be mainly cloudy with a few showers tonight. There will be sunny intervals during the day tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 27 and 31 degrees. There will be sunny periods and isolated showers over the weekend. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 25 to 80, and the pollution level will range from low to high. And the maximum UV index forecast for tomorrow will be about 9. And here's the latest global weather update. Thunderstorms in Shanghai, showers in Taipei and Xiamen. Thunderstorms in Guangzhou, showers in Macau, sunny in Chengdu. Cloudy in Beijing, rain in Seoul, cloudy in Tokyo. Thunderstorms in Bangkok, rain in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila. Showers in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, rain in Jakarta. Bright in New Delhi. Sunny in Cairo. Showers in Brisbane and Sydney, bright in Auckland. Bright in Toronto. Sunny in Vancouver, bright in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Showers in London, rain in Paris, showers in Zurich. And that's the weather. Have a lovely evening.